Martin, good morning. Pleasure to finally get to meet up with you and get to really hear your story so we can share it with all our followers.
Thank you, Oscar. It is wonderful to be here. I know we've talked a lot back and forth over Zooms, texts, Skypes, and pandemics. So I'm thrilled to actually I think there's a lot of us who are anxious to see what comes out, and actually a lot of us to see what 2021 brings us. And what you're doing is awesome. So thank you for having me.
No, pleasure. I know it's been obviously some time, like you mentioned, we've been on the phone, text, everything else. And I really appreciate the time that we get to have, one-on-one time finally to really talk about your brand, talk about your trajectory that got you into wine. And so do you want to start off with that?
Sure. I often think that the son of Mexican immigrants from the 60s and 70s is not an immediately obvious place to start. Our alcohol for us was not a positive influence in the house early on, and it just wine was not a portion one way or the other. I did not grow up in that, and what I did grow up though was something that to me is respecting and valuing deeply education. My dad, for all his pluses and minuses, one thing that he did strive to the bone. He worked his butt off as a landscaper, gardener in the city, in Chula Vista National City. He put me into private school, not in public school. And I think that's like a cue ball, like that's where the trajectory, grows, and the vector gets bigger and a difference, a gradient. And I didn't know how valuable the mind expansion is of proper education. Oscar, sometimes one of the things is that, with Latinos or with any person of color, we face sometimes subtle discrimination, sometimes overt, but there's a social currency, I think, that we tend to overlook when it comes to good education, which teaches you about, puts your world in broader context, gives you an awareness that, and also some credibility that can resist some of the preconceptions that we deal with, right? Like what you look like, what your accent is, where you belong when you speak in Spanish with your family or your daughter in 7-Eleven or in Safeway, and then you turn around and you flawlessly can go into English and you sort of kind of belong, right? You don't. Right. In this day and age, in this past 5 years, you've had to deal with that in ways that are at the forefront. They used to be hidden. Now they're now on the superficie. Anyways, but I digress. My point of bring this up is that you asked about upbringing, and I think the anchor around everything was not just family, but also learning and an insatiable curiosity for education.
And I think that's great. I mean, what part of in your education did it trigger for you to be into the wine industry?
Well, first loving wine was the serendipitous moment. I was an exchange student in Paris as an undergrad in college, and by the time you're 20, right, you've had your exposure to alcohol, whether it's a beer or shots or whatever, right, in college. Right. And so to you, it's just a feature of going to school at a college, university, high school, whatever, right? I remember getting completely can I say the word? Sorry, kind of hammered at Thanksgiving dinner. I was hosted by our host with a bunch of 20-year-olds, and I loved this beautiful buzz that was unlike anything else I experienced around food. The courses that were coming out, us young kids, and the wine. It was a magic. You kind of had a hangover the next day. We all do, but there was that moment walking down the metro stations, stumbling through, and just like having bottles of wine and saying, it was something different. It was a different kind of buzz, a different kind of the state of mind that happens around wine, unlike everything else. And from that point on, I started going to wine tastings, trying to go to the Santa Cruz Mountain Appalachian Passport weekends with I still have the original glass that I received. This would have been in 1999, I think, 98 maybe. As a college kid, just driving through and learning how to spit so you can keep driving, all those things. And you're a romantic kid when you're in college, and you think wine has got this allure, and maybe I can bring a bottle, I have a date with a girl, impress her, So it felt this like perfect beverage, right? To just get into, to learn, to explore, and consume, but also be part of your social awareness that just checked off so many boxes of not just pleasure, but also happiness.
Right.
Those are two different things,
You didn't dream up of it overnight. You weren't just like, hey, I want to become a winemaker, or I want to become a Masters of Wine, or I want to be a som. It was something that was just organically, you kind of like ran into, right? Saying, hey, if I can make this more of a social thing, and I really enjoy all these flavors, it could be something that I could, take to a party or hang out with somebody and so forth. So And you know what? There was a point at which, the history as it is, I was a high-tech recruiter coming out of college, and then 9/11 happened. I worked near an airport, and so I remember that morning there was no airplanes flying over and above, and I wondered what was going on. And the industry tanked, high-tech tanked, and so I couldn't pay my bills as a young recent college grad, and I got into bartending just to do that, and then I kept going to these wine tastings at a place called Wine Globe in San Mateo, and they say, hey, you know what? You keep coming here and you keep tasting with us. Why don't you just start working here? And I said, sure, right? Another paycheck to make ends meet. So my start, again, wasn't this wonderful, perfect, auspicious thing. It was more of a sense of survival, but knowing that I loved wine, right? Okay, well, let's work at a wine shop and do wine shoppy things. And then shortly after that was K&L. Of course, K&L is a juggernaut when it comes to a lot of things, but one of the things that it really does well is train its staff. Okay. Its sales people on the floor, whether you're a clerk, whether you're a stock boy, whatever it is, which is what I did. Those are formative years. And so from 2002 all the way to 2006, that's how I got in the business as a guy on the floor, just stocking shelves and bringing people up. And, I think more of us should just be like, hey, those things. And by the way, there are people that are still work there that are work there now. They're awesome. They should be pillars of our community, within wine community, of like people like Greg Sinclair and Keith Wallenberg, who were influencers before such a thing even existed, who were academically speaking, from Burgundy in Italy, just these people that they may not be buzzwords for us, but the old retail guys that teach you things through decades of buying and bringing in and importing and showing customers, right? And giving them a bottle, they come back, whether it's the Grand Cru or whether it is the Village wine. There's a beauty and a poetry that's often missed about the retailer, the wine shop, the merchant, in this day and age when we are collectively as a culture obsessed with the sommelier community, sommelier experience, right? Which is extremely important. There is a poetry to that as well, but it is not the only experience in wine. Just want to throw that out there. And that's good. So from that experience, what led you to pursuing Masters of Wine?
So I knew there was a point in which 2003, I think it was, where you start learning that, okay, even before that, you take a look at me, subtract 20 years from my face, and you're like, well, you're skinny, you're a baby face, and you're brown. So you don't look the part of what maybe these days we do. We're changing that, right? But back then, in the early 2000s, it's like, I'm here to buy wines for my daughter's wedding. Is there someone here? Can you get someone to help me? And at first, for the first months, I'm like, yes, sure, I'll go. And then eventually you're like, hey, I started tasting, started learning, and you're like, okay, I've heard, the veterans saying stuff, and you start to get into your own skin, and then you start realizing that there's still a resistance, a little subtle resistance about working with you versus somebody that looks more the part. And I quickly said, there's got to be a way to diffuse that. And I turned to education again. I turned to the assistance of credentials, of putting the CSW by my name on a business card and handing it over up front, or sometimes here, here's my number, you can email me, whatever. And they see the name, they're like, okay, there's something after his name. So this person's got some level of knowledge that is useful for me as a customer. I wanted to get past the point of their resistance, past the point of me saying, hey, I know something. Let's just pretend let's just move away from that and get to the point where I can actually help you. Right? Where we agree that you have a budget, you've got your food, your specific recipes, your parents. Let's talk about your parties, talk about your families, talk about your date coming up. I'll help you with this bottle, that bottle, this champagne, this Bordeaux, whatever it is, right? And I found a shortcut. I think a lot of people these days who are in the categories of needing to be included, needing to be highlighted, whether they're for the diversity conversations that are going on in wine these days, right? I think there's a lot of in common with that, with getting a credential, getting a certificate, getting something that helps, helps the stubborn notions, the stubborn preconceptions. So the idea of saying I became a master of wine and the master of wine credential wasn't this final realization to eventually to just do someday. It was part of the journey of always wanting to learn. Okay. Because you always feel like you have to know, you can't be ignorant if you need to be taken seriously. So there's this push to just continue to be curious about these new subjects, the Savoie and the Cremant, Limoux, or anything from different parts of Italy and Southern whatever. It's just, the fact is that you need to be on your toes, right? People who are not taken for granted, right? We have to be on our toes more. We have to dress better, or at least we feel like we have to just check off all these boxes to get to the same level of transactions and acceptance within the wine industry. I know that's changing, but that was definitely a habit that many of us can develop.
Okay, obviously that's changing now, like you mentioned, through education, and obviously curiosity is what sparks everything, right? Curiosity, then you get into the education part, and I think that's how the barriers are being are breaking through, especially now, right? Like you said, there's so much work being done, so everyone has is created equal in that aspect of in that space. And going forward now, right? So that's always very key importance. So what got you into getting your degree? You're actually one of the first Latinos in the U.S., right? With a Master's of Wine?
Technically, from what I understand, I am the only Latino in North America, period.
Yes.
And there's somebody in Argentina who's a Master of Wine. So she's a few years ahead of me, but as far as a Mexican descent,
you're the
first,
only one.
and hopefully not I know for sure I won't be the last. But as far as Mexico itself, there is still someone out there who will someday be the first Mexican citizen born in Mexico, living in Mexico, que va a ser el primero Master of Wine en el mundo de Mexico. Pero por lo pronto, right now, I'm just of descent. Was born 10 miles north of Tijuana. Otherwise, there would be.
Right.
I'd be. You said something earlier, and to answer your point, there's something earlier that I think that the most underrated superpower that we have as humans is curiosity. Mm-hmm. And curiosity can drive and can create and the progress that we see, the part of us that wants to improve or to make or to create or to evolve with the wines you've got in front of you with Peter Paul curiosity. That's what drives. Like, what would it be if I did this? What would I do if I could? And so that the education and becoming an MW was, what would happen? What can I contribute to the industry, but also to my raza, right? If we just break down these barriers and start drinking and stop putting ourselves in boxes a little bit,
You're right. I think that's what I think my first connection to you was that when I read about you and I said, wow, he's from San Diego. Great. He's the first Latino in North America as a Master's of Wine. I'm like, I have to meet him because the more people we see that are in that space, it's like that barrier. You could see you could accomplish a lot of things when you see people like yourself out there, right, doing these things. And I think that's a lot of association that people have, right? They could see it, they could believe it, they could do it. And obviously, you're to the Latino community and in the wine space. I usually will bring you up in a conversation when I'm speaking to other vineyards and other the winemakers. And like, do you know who Martin is? Well, who's Martin? I'm like, he's Masters of Wine. He's the winemaker at Peter Paul. And we go into that because they know, so they could actually identify themselves as there is a pillar there that we could actually see as a reference that we can go beyond. You set a big standard in that aspect, and that's what actually drew me to you. I was like, wow, he's a Latino. I definitely want to connect with him and really get to see how he got there, right? And all your great write-ups, all your great write-ups that you have. Obviously, your education also at Stanford. I mean, you're one of a few people that have been able to accomplish so much in that time frame. Right. So congratulations to that, Martin.
Thank you, Oscar. And I feel like before we move on from the subject where when we talk about celebrating the diversity, celebrating breaking down these barriers, and celebrating Latino versus other things, or not just versus. I don't want it to be about versus. What I'm trying to say is that you have also, from a business perspective, people who are listening or people who are watching who are not Latino, who are not just anything. Everybody has a value, right? And it's not an exchange of somebody else's value. And I want to make sure that in the celebration of this diversity, Black, transgender, Latino, Asian, disability, everything, that this community is generally better. Wine industry is generally better with a diverse set of voices. My point is, from a business sense, it makes a lot of sense to internalize and to view the business sense of celebrating all the voices. Now, we just happen to be discussing Latino voices, Mexicano voices now, because we are two Mexicanos that are trying to break down the misconception, but not at the expense of those that do love, make, create wine, to join them.
Correct.
There is no threat. I want to make sure that that's part of the conversation. That Absolutely. It is, more people at the party, the merrier. Exactly. Imagine if everybody at the party was just like you. That would be actually kind of freaking, kind of probably boring eventually, and weird. And you want we don't want monocultures in nature. Right. So why do we want monocultures in our businesses and our wine industry?
That's true. And I think, and obviously to that point, and the initiatives that you've taken place in now, and your latest one with Wine Unified, right? That is, creating that inclusion and diversity to people of color is great, because we see that more and more, like you said, breaking down those barriers one by one. And to that point, I really want to say that, I think as anyone should be able to enjoy it, learn about it, and be part of it, right? Why not? If you love it, your curiosity sets your path, go for it and accomplish, that curiosity, see where it leads you. Sometimes it leads you down a bunch of rabbit holes, but at least you're learning through those. All right. So that's the biggest thing. Yes. So tell me now, how did this lead you to becoming a winemaker at Peter Paul Wines?
So towards 2010, 11, I got hired. Well, I should say that the Behringer family, not the Behringer Winery, the Behringer family, who owned a shop in St. Helena called St. Helena Wine Center, which is now the Bottle Shop. It's evolved. It's a different entity now. But back then, they hired me as a buyer, having no buying experience. Maybe I could have bought. I was assistant buyer, which I thought I kind of was, but maybe I wasn't. You kind of fake it till you make it. Right. And you know the brands, the pricing, the wholesale market, and so they took a chance on me. From that point, I switched over to being a buyer as opposed to just I don't want to say just, right, but it's a different version of a retail person. And so for a number of years, I managed a shop in St. Helena. That's where a lot of my friendships come from still to this day. I'm very much, even though I don't live in Napa, I work and breathe Napa for a number of years now, and it's a special place in my heart. I live in Benicia, half an hour south. And then in 2011, I got hired as the wine buyer and importer for a global wine company. I'll abbreviate it, GWC. GWC was a high-profile buying gig that I had to manage the clubs and buying the programs for the New York Times Wine Club, for Williams-Sonoma Wine Club, Food and Wine Magazine. There's a few others that we did, but generally that was the point at which my network and the career really started to have more of a national presence. But then, and that was the main investor for that was a guy called Peter Paul. And he's an entrepreneur, and he was in the wine business. He was a strong financial investor in GWC. And Peter said, "Hey, Martin, I'm got this brand. I knew of the brand Peter Paul at the time, but I didn't have a positive or negative. It was just another brand that of all the hundreds that you deal with or that right?" And I said, well, I think that, your packaging could probably use a little bit of an upgrade. I think the wines are great, but I think that, refocusing this way or that way from the perspective of a retailer, mind you, the wines were well shepherded from the winemaking perspective, but I think there were too many SKUs, so they kind of got confused here and there. Again, I come from business, not from production. Right. I come from a retail vision, not from a production vision. So I emphasize different things versus previous management. And one is not better than the other. You just have different disciplines. Right. So the discipline I took is, you'll see this bottle here. So this is a Chardonnay, Bacigalupi. You have the new packaging. This is the 2015. Right. So you have now the 18 there. You can see the difference. Yes. And the main difference really isn't just, well, I don't want to talk ill of the previous packaging, but the fact is, for instance, a red top is confusing, potentially, to who? To the guy at the retail or girl at the retail shop. So I was looking at this from a perspective of elegance, making it even more elegant and more clear. This is red, this is white. Simple things like that, backing up. So he said, take over for me, take over for Peter Paul. And that was in 2016, and I had no experience running a winery or making wine and whatever. So it was kind of an accidental thing that we fell into. He trusted me, and I was grateful for that.
Wow. So that was he took a big leap. But again, it was all through those friendships you established, and obviously your work ethic that you had that actually made you stand out. For him to say, "Hey, I want you to come and run my winery." I mean, that's a very big responsibility. Yeah, I think it was. And so, there is a bit of, there is trust, had been trust. There has been rolling of the dice. And thankfully, we're doing well. We're moving forward. Yeah. Yeah. I had one of the first bottles that I received from you. A friend of mine here from Temecula he owns a winery here, and he says, "Wow, that's one of my favorite wines, Oscar." And I was like, "Oh, wow." I mean, I would have never thought, obviously he's traveled all around the world. He has a great winery here. And he just mentioned, he goes, you're a lucky guy. Those wines are really good. He goes, I have those in my cellar. So that was good to know. And your 2018 is just something that, shocked me. I really, enjoyed it. And from there, my love grew for Bacigalupi. And so this is this is your 2018. You just did a release of your 19, right?
Yes.
Wow.
So the 18 is long gone. It sold as fast as it during the pandemic as it normally does. I call it the honey badger of wine. The video, the honey badger don't care videos. I don't know if you've seen those.
Yes, I have.
So honey badgers don't give a oof, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, this is just this beast that just plods along, continues in a positive way. Just you got a snake bite. Oh, you know what? You'll still just wake up, keep eating the snake. It's like these challenges that the honey badger doesn't care about, or just And so Bacigalupi is, yes, it is 60% new oak. It is all fermented and matured in oak. 60% of it's new. Full malolactic, I think in 18 also. Mm-hmm. And ideally released probably anywhere from 3 to 6 months after, so 2 years after it's been fermented, and ages fantastically well. We've got 2008s and 9s that are still holding up of this particular wine. So there is a lot of lees stirring. So there's a lot of the things that people either love to hate or hate to love, but they say they don't, right? In terms of oaky, rich, beautiful, textured, heavy, full-bodied Chardonnay. And it's not cheap. It's $48 on the shelf. And all those reasons, you'd be like, is that going to be your hardest wine to sell? Because, many people can say, oh, we want the lean, unoaked version of Chardonnay, or that's really expensive. I'm like, honey, Bacigalupi don't care. It sells out. It wins you over. Yeah. You think there's too much oak? Drink it. You'd be like, oh, that's just right amount of oak.
Exactly. And that's what I thought. It was so well balanced, because I've had so many other Chardonnays that isn't really, they're either, too much oak or under oaked, or it's not well balanced properly. And you hit it on all cylinders on this. And I think that's what I bought one of your last cases, right? That's what I was at one of your, and I was like, man, I think I have a couple of bottles left, and I'm aging those. And, but this is something that really made me now identify when I look at Chardonnays now, or just any fruit that comes and it's bottled and it says Bacigalupi. I'm like, okay, thank you, Martin, for showing me the way of Baci. Because, with so many vineyards out there, it's so hard to know which one's good, right? Which one's the one that's really going to, stay in your mind for you when you go shopping, that's something you're going to stand out for. I mean, for me, those are the words that stand out. Bacigalupi, and obviously brands like yourselves, like Peter Paul, that do a great job of putting together your great lineup. So
yeah, and you touch on a point about the magic of the place, right? We throw around the word terroir often, and terroir, broadly speaking, is of course the sense of the place of either that region or that vineyard, and some terroirs or some senses of places are quieter than others. Some of them can be blended in or diluted, and some of them are magical, and then there's some that are just something else. And Bacigalupi, as we know historically from a perspective, right, a portion of this was part of the Judgment of Paris. By the way, Stephen Spurrier, may he rest in peace, the guy who put this on 44 years ago. I was born in 76 as well. Like, how old am I? That's how long ago it was. So Bacigalupi was 40% of the blend of the Chardonnay that beat the Burgundians in the blind tasting in Paris. So we do taste a little bit of that history. Right. Whenever we taste a bit of Bacigalupi, that those vineyards, those blocks, those clones made it. And we can see right now, tasting this evocative Chardonnay, and tasting compared to my Sonoma Coast and to other Chardonnays, and there's something about Baci, right? Yeah. And it's elusively, you can't put your finger on it, but it's there, and that's what makes it special. So I think that echoes what you said earlier.
I'm a fan of Peter Paul and what you've done, and I love your reds. as well. I enjoyed your Masters of Blend. That was such a great bottle. I shared it over dinner with a couple of friends, and they were shocked. They were like, "Where's this bottle from? Where, how much is this bottle?" and so forth. And I said, "Man, this is a small producer up north," and that's what the same thing that stood out. I shared the Chardonnay with them. They were like, "No, we have our own Chardonnay." I'm like, "No, try this Chardonnay. I know your Chardonnay is really good too, but you need to try this one." Right. And it just turns everyone, right? They're just like, "What is this?" And then you tell people there's a story in 1976, the tasting of Paris, how they got the history, and it kind of resonates with them. They're like, "Well, I get it." So now they want to taste it and see what's so intriguing about it, right? Then they taste it and they fall in love with it. So that's definitely a good thing. So this Pinot Noir, I've been drinking a lot of Pinot like this month. It's just and great stuff. Obviously, Sebastopol, Sonoma. I love that climate that creates this beautiful wines that all these winemakers get to create there. Can you tell me a little bit about this one? This 2018, the Mille Frères?
Yeah. The Mille Frères. So in French, it would be Thousand Brothers. Mille Frères, if you want to just roll your whatever, Thousand Brothers, Mille Frères. This is, we're in the middle of moving houses, so I have a collection of old stuff that's here. But the Mille Frères, there is a vineyard called Frères Vineyard in Russian River.
Okay.
And so the previous producers were making wine out of that source, and it was their best top end Pinot Noir. Thinking like a retail shop guy, I knew that we were going to lose that contract when I took over, and so and then there was also another wine called the Mill Station. So Mill was there, was our most well-known, and then Frère was there. And so at the time I thought, how do I make the continuation so that people don't get jarred by thinking, wait, what's this? Is this a new thing? Or, I recall the Frère, and where is the Frère now, right? And then where's the Mill? Where's the Mill? So I just combined the two names. Just as this sounds cool, 1,000 Brothers, a cluster of grapes is around 800 berries approximately, give or take. I know there's a lot more. So a cluster of grapes is almost 1,000, but 1,000 berries. It wasn't an intentional, some specific space, but that's where the name came from in 2016.
Got it.
And then, the source of fruit is primarily, not all of it, but primarily 80% roughly, from a vineyard called Terra de Promisio. It's Latin. Terra de Promisio. It's almost it's Latin, I think. Mm-hmm. And land of promise, not promised land, but the land of promise. That's an important distinction. Farmed by Diana and Charles Caron in the Petaluma Gap, off of 116. Towards Petaluma, and it is a place that it's relatively extreme, even though it's not truly coastal like the western part of Sonoma. It does have the transverse mountain range as opposed to north-south. We need to remember that along the coast of California, Oregon, and Washington, the temperature gradient from going warmer to cooler as you think you go north or south, right? Going south is warmer, going north is cooler. That's sort of the general perception of the Northern Hemisphere.
Right.
In the coast of west coast of California, and frankly, even further south, what dictates your microclimate is whether or not you're blocked by the coastal range or not. Because there's some cool wind, there's a lot of fog that comes through, in those little gaps that you driving from San Francisco to Santa Barbara on 101, right? And you just drive through around that Monterey, Salinas, and you always see the sort of clouds and it kind of like coolness. And then you go further south and you're like, oh, now you're in Paso, now it's sunny. Then you go through parts of Santa Barbara, now it's cool and windy, right? So there's pockets all the way up to the Cascades, to the Cascade Mountains and to Washington, Oregon, right? Parts of Washington are blocked from that, and they're desert and they're warm during the days, right? So my point is that Petaluma is part of that breathing living, breathing range of pockets of where the Pacific influences inland through heavy winds and through fog rolling in and out like it's breathing throughout the day. What that does for the grapes is obviously we know that to a degree, some amount of struggle creates focus on the berries, right? And it's a common theme that a lot of it happens around wine. And in this case, the wind certainly is a natural yield suppressor, so we don't get much yields off of this land. And of course, the fog plays its role too, and the temperature variation between day and night really does affect these vines. If you do juice samples at night at 3 a.m. versus 8 a.m. versus 3 p.m., it's like it's like, is this the same vineyard? This is what Diana taught me. And she's, of course, the farmer, so she knows her grapes well. And they're sneaky. It's hard to find the right picking times because there is an exhale and an inhale that these vineyards do feel alive. That's what comes out of this particular site, that I know you need to listen to what the farmers give you, and the relationship and the friendships that we have with the Terra de Primicio vineyard, I believe, is what allows us to get good good blocks and plots of land and quality fruit. They look out for us, even though we're a small no-name brand. We're not willing. Oh, by the way, some of the other sources that have got stuff from this place, from Terra de Primicio, in the past and the present, a cluster of wineries called Kistler, Costa Brown, Williams Sellium, Siduri, Gary Farrell. There's a who's who of Pinot Noir producers, right? That are anchors of quality and powerful brands, who have over the years have sourced fruit from this particular vineyard that we are also sourcing fruit since 2016, 17 maybe.
Do you continue to? Are you going to continue with this line every year?
Fair, absolutely. Although in 2020, of course, we did not. We lost. They lost. I lost the wine. They lost the grapes due to smoke taint. Of course, could have been picked, but they decided. Excuse me. They decided not to. So there is an 18 that you have on hand, which is I love the 18. 19 is just being released. It's unrefined, unfiltered, a little bit cloudier, closer to quote unquote a natural wine if you want to go down that rabbit hole of conversation. 2020 was going to be fantastic, but didn't make it. And we're hoping, crossing our fingers, that 2021 we got a parcel further up along the hill, less fertile soil and even lower yields, and we're excited to see what's going to come out of that. Of that wine. And that's where Mary comes from. Occasionally we make a wine called Mary, which I think I sent you.
No,
I didn't.
Is that your champagne?
No. Oh, we have champagne too, but there's a 17 Mary. I had like one bottle left. It's gone. We only, because the name Peter Paul, that's his name, right? My owner boss. And so people of the older generation say, "Hey, where's Peter Paul? Oh, where's Mary?" It's like, well,
that's right.
It's funny to a certain degree, right? It's just take the joke around with it. So we make one barrel of the best Pinot Noir. When we find her, we bottle Mary, and that was in 2017.
Okay.
And we probably won't see her again until 2021.
Wow.
Why did I bring this up? Because we hope that 2021 she'll come back. But in the meantime, the core, our prestige line of Pinot Noir is the Mills Rare, from which Mary may show up or not.
I think I did have that's right. The ones that you sent me were practically your library wines, right? The ones that I got first. That's right. Those were just great. I just remember enjoying them with our family with some really big meals. We were mostly like tomahawks and big ribeyes. That's what we were eating. And it was just a great pairing. It was the talk of the table was your wine. Because normally it was like, oh, are we having Napa? What are we having? This is such an extravagant dinner. Let's just really enjoy with some really good wine. And when you bring a label that people are not familiar with, they're just like, are you sure we're going to enjoy this wine with this meal? We're like, you're going to love it. And I mean, it was the talk of the night, right? It's just how great it was. And I hadn't, tried your, I think I splashed it probably like 8 months ago or something of your Pinot, of this one. And right now it's just it smells great. The aromatics are beautiful on this. Your tannins, it's good. It's beautiful. What else should I be getting out of this?
So this does also have a bit of Russian River. So I want to make sure that the Russian River is there, part of what makes our lower tier Gravettine Highway Pinot Noir. But the core of this comes, as I mentioned, from the Terre de Prometeo vineyard. And that vineyard has a really dark fruit profile.
Yeah.
Most Pinot Noir, and even my Russian River, has a red fruit quality to it, right? You think of it evokes strawberries and raspberry, right? Red currant and even pomegranate, cranberry kind of thing, right? And I'll say TDP for short, TDP, or therefore the Nofer Terra de Prometeo. This particular bottling tends to give us this darker fruit. Still within the Pinot Noir profile. I mean, it just is what it is. It's not like it's trying to be anything else, but whether it's, again, terroir, whether it's the clonal variety, whether it's the soil, it's all of that. I presume the microbiota, in the soil. It's sustainably farmed, by the way, certified sustainable, which is a whole different topic. And alive, the soil's alive, grapes are alive. And they're smaller berries. I think there's both a color darkness as well as a flavor, darkness of flavor and darkness of color. So you have more of the black plum, you have more of blackberry, mixture of both reds and black fruits that you really get from here. And then, quite honestly, I'm happy to take this critique on, but these wines are not low alcohol, right? And that's just what is given to us. We believe it's still in balance. I don't want to make grotesque and overwrought and over-extracted wines, but this is a 14.9, alcohol wine. It's relatively beastly, but the idea is that everything around it, the fruit, the tannin, the phenolic ripeness, is in balance with what is a fairly broad, dense footprinted Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come off as a big alcohol nose, which is good. I think that's where your fruit really plays a lot, right? Your tannins and the timing, how you guys pick this and so forth, because you don't get that. And normally when you have a 14.9 of any other wine, that's the first thing you get. You're like, okay, let me go air that out for maybe 10, 15 minutes so that could calm down, right? But you have some really, really pretty legs on this, obviously. And it obviously darker compared to your typical Russian River, Pinots. But it really does stand out. I mean, you guys have a great blend of different fruit from one of the best places as well to come up with this. So how successful was this brand right now, this line year 2018? Did you guys sell out?
No, well, yes, the 18, when you're talking about the $48, $50 Pinot Noir space is crowded. Yeah. There's a lot of big names out there. And we released this right at the start of the pandemic. Okay. And it was certainly, I think, a challenge from the sense that most of the placements that were coming out of this were for restaurants, not by the glass, but more by the bottle placements in the East Coast, New York, New Hampshire, those kinds of things, California. So despite that, I feel like it was very successful. It was a dramatic reorder for our wine club business, and retail, of course, went really well. And we're getting close to being sold out of this particular wine. Okay. But I would say that, the pandemic did hurt, in terms of anybody who had a significant portion of their business supported by the restaurant community. Let's not forget, of course, that the most crucial elements were the fact that restaurant workers and staff in hospitality suffered, right? It's not just that we see them as a conduit for business, but that they're humans who lost their jobs, lost their businesses, and had to make ends meet or come up with extraordinary measures to survive through all these. It's been over a year now, right? So with that said, yes, that we certainly have probably, 30 or 40 cases now that we probably would not have had of the 17 which sold out, of the 16 which sold out faster. And, Yeah, it's.
Well, I think it's great
we see
because
the science with the 19. People are asking about the 19 now, so it's good.
yeah, that's great. And right now, you guys don't have a tasting room, right? It's just a direct to consumer, or is that a plan in the future?
We are closed to the public, and we're a private winery. Our facility that I make the wine now, we just moved facilities to a place called RD Winery in South Napa. We're very excited about them. They are also gearing towards trying to become certified Napa Green. They're in process of doing that. The sustainability and climate action is very important for us. Our bottles are changed shape, and when you have the 19 of those in front of you right now, they'll be wax tops because we think that carbon footprint and the waste product is different. So people are groaning or saying, "Oh no, wax tops!" Dude, we're gonna make a tutorial about how easy it is to actually open up the wax top versus the foil. It's actually faster probably. But I know there's some resistance to that, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And Oscar, he'd be like, "Martín, él me dijo que iba a hacer esto."
Exactly.
So and you'll be like cursing under your breath, like, "Okay, what am I supposed to cut it? Do it not?" Okay, so I'll show you what that's like eventually. It's you. You're a wine pro. You get it. But the point is, consumers may resist, right? But so it's made in Napa, and our fruit sources are in Rush River and Petaluma, and then my offices are in Petaluma.
Okay.
So we don't have any license to show people or to host people, right? So press pause on the recording. I know you're not going to, but the point I'm making here is that if somebody is interested in coming and visiting, shoot me an email or a text. Probably email is probably the best thing.
Right.
And we do have relationships with, once they open up again, we do have relationships with locations that we can just meet up for lunch, dinner, or occasionally at certain sites that I don't want to be too specific, but the point is if you email me through Oscar's through viewing of Oscar's channel here, we can talk about something.
That's awesome. You'll make it happen. That's the thing. You'll meet it.
Just not officially, and we're not in hospitality. We don't have a tasting room. We only make about 2,000 cases total a year. Wow. And most of us are focused on making the wine, and supporting our channels of distribution, and of course direct. We can sell to a winery. We can sell to you direct. We have a website you can buy from us directly, and we ship to you. But in terms of visiting, there's always other compliance issues which we don't have a license for. So
that's not bad. I think I loved your Hunker Down special. I think that was the first ones that I bought once you released that. That was great. It lasted me about 2 weeks or so. That's when it was the prime pandemic, so that didn't last that long. But it was just such a great lineup, and obviously the affordability also of the wines that you have there, right? It was they're not all $50, $60 a bottle and so forth. The way the bundles work, it was great. I think that was a good program you put together on the retail side for us to really get to taste your wines. That was awesome, and I really appreciate that. And that just got more passion for me to enjoy your wines and what's coming next and so forth. So what is do you have anything new coming out that you think you're going to be sharing with us for 2021 besides your vintages that you're releasing? Is there a new blend or anything you're going to be coming up with?
Yeah, I will mention that here, but before that, you said about the Hunker Down special, and that really helped put us on the map and on the public sphere. I think money.com said we were one of the best wine club, bangs for the buck,
right?
Because of the Hunker Down special during April, May. That was survival mode. It was more like, it's time to hunker down and here's some booze because I'm drinking more booze, and you better. So if I'm doing this, I'm sure you guys are. So here are these specials, and we had, sanity specials, hunker down specials that we're going through, and we were just cooped up and just trying to. Those are kind of seems like a long ago, but it wasn't. But thanks to some of the profile individuals like Paige Comrie of Wine with Paige, who featured us part of that and gave us. Who kind of led into the money.com profile for Peter Paul. That was great. But back to what your question was, we do have release of the wine club is going to come out. And so people who join our wine club, they receive some bottles, automatic shipments. You can see it on the website. It's not a plug necessarily, but peterpaulwines.com has information about that. But what's coming out is the release of the new Master's Blend vintage. So the 17 vintage is going to be released here soon. Hot on the heels from that is going to be the 18 Master's Blend and the 18 Napa Cab, probably in a few more months. And 18 is rocking. 18 Napa is rocking. We also have a dessert wine that is not online. It will be soon, and it's something that we've kept hidden for a while. It is as you know, we don't make a champagne. We partner with a champagne producer. That's a different story. For now, I think we can discuss the fact that champagne is there that we can discuss. But we have this tradition of sourcing limited quantities of wines that we don't specialize, that we can't make, like champagne. And now, like a dessert wine from the Côte de Chaume region in Loire Valley, made out of Chenin Blanc, with Botrytis Chenin Blanc, made for us by a producer called Domaine de Forge, that I'm going to release to the public finally after 2 years of only being off the menu. It's an age-worthy wine. It's 2015. Oh wow! And so it's gonna outlive me probably. So we're not in any rush to sell it, but that's what's coming out in 2021 is that. Now, before people roll their eyes and be like, a dessert wine, really? That does to dessert wine what Bacigalupi does to Chardonnay. It's legit. It's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is not just any sweet stuff. This is meaningful, sticky wine. Wow. You know, noble rot, just like Sauterne, but not from the grapes of Bordeaux, but from the Loire, from the Chenin Blanc grape. And I have a comment here for you, Oscar, which is, it's on my site. You say it is I hear you don't like dessert wine, but try it as first, then decide.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's my original dad joke.
That's right. That's what I was saying. I go, is that part of your dad joke line that you put in there now?
Yeah, but try this first, then decide.
Very nice. I like that. And I know you're a little bit limited for time. We're hitting that hour marker, and I just want to say thank you again for cheers. Thank you again for your time, sharing your story and your thoughts in general about how the wine industry needs to change and how it's changing. But more than your comments, you are making the change. You're leading in so many different aspects, certain things, and that's even better, right? Some people talk about it and listen to it. You're actually taking part and being part of that fusion that is rippling these effects in the industry. So congratulations to that, Martin.
Thank you, Oscar. And we're still learning. This is morning to make, you make mistakes all the time about different things, and you just continue forward. If your intentions are in the right place and you're able to listen and to learn, and whether it comes through community or mentorship, not putting less distance between those of us who have a good career, those of us who quote unquote have made it, and those of us who are upcoming and who say the only difference I can see, the only thing that separates me as a master of wine and anyone who is just getting started in wine is just the work and the years. There is no magic sauce. There is no special palette that any of us who are MWs have that you can't have or don't have. It's just it is valuable as an education and as a practice and as hard work. But one thing I want to bring down is any ideas of notions of pedestals, that we're up here and that you young person is down here. No. It's not like that.
Well, again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Oscar. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the other side.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.